Welcome back to this episode of Mining the Comments. We'll discuss how we can better understand and deal with a string of bad nights. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody who posted comments and questions on the previous videos. And this week, question comes from Henrietta. Question is, Cristian, can you talk about when you've had a string of bad nights and you're so overtired that your body goes into hyper mode and won't let you? This is never talked about. Well, if we go back to just what insomnia is, I would say that insomnia is fear of wakefulness with a heightened focus on sleep and the anxiety it generates, rather than a physical inability to sleep. And so if we have a difficult night, I would say we are still possibly hyper aroused. We're still nervous. We're still anxious. We are still dealing with fear. And unfortunately, that puts us in a bit more of a defensive stance where now we have one night. We don't want to have another night, right? We don't want to keep going and getting into the struggle. And so oftentimes this fear, anticipation of what will happen the next night can oftentimes add pressure for us to sleep because we're afraid that we don't want to have another night like this. And so we can feel very vulnerable. We can be filled with fear and anxiety. And so when we've had a string, like you said, of bad nights, we can understand that that puts even more pressure. And since sleeping is something that we have no control of, we can once again be wrapped up in this fear and anxiety, which is again completely understandable. So what to do? What can we do about it? Well, what was again super helpful in my case, and I think in most cases what we can do is, number one, recognize that this fear is completely normal. I think sometimes people forget how helpful this is, because we oftentimes, especially with insomnia, because we can so oftentimes feel alone and feel like we're just, people can't understand, especially people around us really can't understand what we're going through. And so we can have such an intense level of just being like such an outcast. So the moment we start to, whether we join the immunity program or watch videos or read books or whatever we do, once we start talking to other people that have dealt with insomnia, we can see that any of these experiences that we're having are so completely normal. They're so common, even though they don't feel good, even though that's not something that we look for. We can shift from a position of feeling completely misunderstood or lonely to realizing that insomnia is not unique. Insomnia has quite similar patterns because they're all based on fear, and all of us as humans have very similar understanding to fear and anxiety. We've all had those moments. We know what that feeling is like. And so now when we attach it to trying to perform, trying to do something that we cannot control, now it just adds much higher levels of anxiety and fear because you really want something and we really don't know how to control it because we can't. And so if we have a bad night, which, really in reality, people that don't have insomnia will have a bad night here and there. That's fairly common. It's so much, again, how we respond to it that really makes the difference. How do we get back into the struggle of not sleeping, or how do we go from one night of little to no sleep to several nights? It's really how we respond. And when we recognize or see that we're still dealing with some fear, we're still dealing with some hyperarousal, we can say to ourselves, this is normal. I understand what's going on. Our subconscious is perceiving this as a threat. And what can I do in response? I can befriend wakefulness, right? So befriending wakefulness is what? Retraining the subconscious to see that we are safe and do whatever we can do to help pass the time. So think of worst case scenario, you're in a super uncomfortable situation. What can we do to make the experience less miserable, less awful? And knowing that we are safe, knowing that there is no real threat, doesn't feel comfortable. It's quite uncomfortable. It's quite unpleasant. But then we think about the thoughts that we're having through the night, which really create a lot more pressure, a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety. And so now we have all this added thoughts and feelings throughout the night. And we wake up, then the next day begins. And we go throughout that day feeling heavy, feeling tired, feeling pressure, and also with the thoughts of what's going to happen tonight. And that certainly is going to put a lot of pressure on the following night. And so now the brain starts to catastrophize, starts to think about, what if this happens again? I won't be able to handle this. And now we start putting even more pressure on ourselves. And so when night falls, we're already anxious. We're already hyper aroused. We're already very, very rigid. And of course, it's going to be difficult. And the reality is we don't know what's going to happen that night. And if we try and enter that night in a more neutral stance, in a more curious approach as opposed to defensive, it can definitely put a lot less pressure on ourselves. Now, I know this is so much easier said than done, but this takes some practice. So I have had some difficult nights here and there, but they're completely, to me, they're unrelated to insomnia. I feel like even though I have a rough night, I can immediately connect it to something that's happened, whether it's work related or family or whatever it is. And maybe I'm thinking about stuff, might keep me up. That's just a normal response. So what can we do with a string of bad nights? We can, number one, recognize that this happens to almost everybody that's ever dealt with insomnia. So you're not a stranger. You're not strange. Join the club. And what happens is we can realize that we're still afraid. We're still nervous. We're still anxious. And when we feel fear and anxiety, we can realize that it can be helpful to notice the big difference between feeling or being anxious because we are uncomfortable for the future, or we're uncomfortable because we don't know what's going to happen the following night. And we can move to a position where we're certainly more focused on seeing that even though we're uncomfortable, we can feel safe. We can be safe in our home. And so much of this is wrapped up in our thoughts and feelings throughout the night. So when we see that we've been able to sleep before, that this isn't a physical inability to sleep, this is something that is just in our heads, that it is fear, it is perceived fear, perceived danger, then we can see that this is just something that's going to pass. If you've said you've had a string of bad nights, that means you've had a string of good nights. And so we can reflect back to, something. I have plenty of evidence to show that not only have I been able to sleep before, but I've been able to sleep for many years or many days. And this is just a speed bump. This is just a little bit of a struggle that I'm going through. And my body hasn't forgotten how to sleep. My brain isn't broken. And if we can put ourselves in a position where we're putting less pressure on ourselves, sleep is going to happen. Sleep is going to come. I would also be careful when it comes to what our expectations are. If we're hoping that we'll go to this immediate response to sleeping whatever, 6, 7, 8 hours a night without waking up, this profound, just super deep, wonderful sleep, the expectations may be a little bit high there, and we can all of a sudden start feeling disappointment even when we start sleeping better. I would say when things started improving for me, it wasn't overnight by any means. And what I've mentioned before, that I would wake up at least a dozen times a night. I mean, it was constant. And that went on, in my case, for, I would say, at least a few months. I definitely didn't keep track of it, but I was constantly waking up. And if you ask me now how I'm sleeping so much better. How much am I sleeping? I don't know, because I don't track it. Do I wake up at night? I still do, every single night, several times a night. But it's my response that either gives it more energy or puts more pressure the following night or not. And so since I really don't have any expectations, or I'm not seeing, I'm not looking for sleep to look a certain way, I'm just allowing the body to do whatever it needs. There's a lot less pressure. And will I someday go back to sleeping through the night like I used to when I was a kid? I don't know. I don't think it matters, because my focus now is the body needs to do whatever it does. If I have a difficult night, whatever that looks like, we're completely safe. There's no problems there. I mean, we all had, well, not we all, but many of us have had kids, and we wake up because of whatever issues that happen. They're sick in the middle of the night, or, storms, or whatever it is. But whatever bumps we have along the way, there's a big difference between blaming it on this hypersleep or hyperarousal and getting wrapped up in something that we can't control, as opposed to putting ourselves in a position and saying, it's okay, whatever's going on, this is just temporary. And in doing so, in responding that way, we can generally start to have less of this hyperarousal. So I hope this was let's go over the question one time. Yeah, I'll talk about string of bad nights. Overtired. Yeah, the overtired definitely puts a lot more pressure with us in wanting to perform sleep, because we don't want to feel that sensation. So anytime we avoid these feelings of I'm tired, I need more sleep so I can avoid or get rid of this feeling or the sensation that I'm experiencing, now we're in a bit of a struggle. What was helpful for me is anytime that I'm tired, even if I'm sleeping fine, anytime that I'm tired, the last thing I do is blame it on sleep. The last thing I want to do is put the pressure on something that I cannot control. I'll even say, oh, maybe I haven't been eating very well. Maybe that's why I'm tired. Or maybe it's been a long couple of days or a long week, or it's been stressful. Maybe there's a lot of things that are going on. And I start removing this, sleep is the only thing that helps me to feel good or feel rested or feel better, as opposed to, maybe even if I don't sleep well at night for whatever reason, I go, oh my goodness, maybe it's because I have a very busy week or have a lot of things going on. So I keep moving away from anything that is related to sleep, which is something that I cannot control. And in doing so, I tend to go back to sleeping really well. I can't remember the last time I've had a string of bad nights. I have had a difficult night here and there, but it's definitely very logical reasons why. We've had family health issues and other things that have come up, and we've had a kind of a difficult night a few nights ago, but that was something related to, not due to insomnia, it's just due to life circumstances. And my response once again was, this is completely normal. And the following night, I was able to go to sleep without any struggle. So what I would say, the more we move away from putting attention and focus on this trying to perform sleep, the less pressure we can feel, the less pressure we can put on ourselves, the less hyperarousal we'll feel. And instead of thinking that we're doing something wrong and it's not allowing us to sleep, like now we can't sleep, we can just say, you know something, the body's doing whatever it needs to do. I'm sure things will be fine. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was able to answer your question. And anyways, I will go ahead and go over any questions and comments that you may have in the following weeks and be happy to respond to those. One last thing. We'll be starting a Spanish channel in the near future, but I'm also bilingual. So if you know somebody that is struggling with sleep and only speaks Spanish, have them go ahead and post questions on here, and I'll do my best to respond. I also offer one-on-one coaching calls in Spanish. So until then, have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.
Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you found incredible value in the video you just watched. If you did, please share it with the world, like it, comment, because this way more people can find their way to peaceful sleep. Now, if you like learning by reading and you feel like you have a little ways to go, then head over to Amazon and check out Set It and Forget It. It is a very easy book to read. It is flowy, it has illustrations. But if you're looking for some deeper understanding, then this is Natto, maybe the one for you. I hope they really help. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping.